Well, kia ora, good afternoon everybody. Can I just say thank you for coming out here to Visi. It's been fantastic to see the work that's going on here in this rather great company that produces really iconic packaging. It's a pretty special milestone. In fact, they're using 70% recycled content now, which makes them amongst the highest in the world of producing glass bottles and receptacles. So really special to be here. Great to be here with our Minister of Justice and Minister of Police, Paul Goldsmith and Mark Mitchell. And the reason is that also some good encouraging signs, I think some good early encouraging momentum around the reduction and trying to meet our reduction of 20,000 victims of violent crime being reduced by 2029, and we're making some good progress on that. And I think that's a collective effort from both ministers and their teams, but certainly the police, the corrections team, but also the general public as well. And so I just want to say thank you as we try and restore law and order in New Zealand. It's good to be celebrating, or at least acknowledging some of these milestones, acknowledging also that we have a long way to go to get to where we need to get to. With that, we're happy to take your questions.
By your own admission, they include some of when labels and power. Does that mean that their approach is working?
I can tell you it definitely wasn't working. Their approach was to actually have one target around law and order, and that was to reduce the prison population. We want to see the prison population reduced, but we want to see it on the back of reduced crime. And that approach didn't work because it led to 30% growth in violent crime, 50% growth in gang membership, a doubling of retail crime, and a fourfold increase in ram raids. And so across serious crime, youth crime, and now stronger sentencing, I think our government's done a good job in 16 months of putting in place some really powerful legislation and, more importantly, some actions to make sure New Zealanders are safer.
Which of these policies, or your policies, do you think has contributed the most to the reduction? Are you able to directly link any of your policies to this reduction?
I'll let Minister Goldsmith talk to that one.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing we did as a government was send a very strong signal that rather than having a target to reduce the prison population, regardless of what's going on in the community, our focus was to reduce the number of victims of crime. Yeah. And that filters through the whole system. We also signalled that we weren't going to be funding cultural reports and a culture of excuses for crime, that people will be held accountable for their crimes. And then we've worked our way through the legislation. The gang legislation has taken effect already this summer. That'll be feeding into the figures right at the end, and we've got our sentencing laws and 3 strikes laws. They haven't taken effect yet, but again we've sent a very powerful signal. So it's been about setting a strong signal that we're not up for the culture of excuses, we're up for people being held accountable, and that has filtered through, and we're starting to make some real progress. So to be ahead of the target already is very encouraging. It's going to bounce around a bit, but we feel very good. Well, the high level, we've got some stats around the various cities. So Auckland and Christchurch have made particular progress. The full survey comes out in an annual reflection, so we get quarterly results because we're very keen to see progress towards tracking that goal. So, yep, there's been some real progress, particularly in Auckland and Christchurch.
Prime Minister, just on the changing of wording around pregnant people / women in the health sector, what do you make of that? Do you have a view on whether or not it should have been changed?
Absolutely, it's common sense. Pregnant people are women.
Do you think that health professionals should have been trusted to make that assumption on that, to make that call on their own?
No, the Minister's right. We want really clear language and appropriate language, and that's what she's doing. Of course, we need to have tailored communications where we need it too.
Is it coalition-wide policy? Are you all in sort of unison saying this is the right way to go?
Yes, and I'd say most New Zealanders would refer to pregnant people as women.
Do you think that stopping the use of inclusive language like pregnant people is the most pressing issue in restricting people?
I'll just say to you right now that we're also not stopping. We're actually also allowing other language that's appropriate to be used in communications around healthcare issues. But you just ask a pretty common sense question. Are pregnant people women? Yes. Well, just women would be fine. Yep.
But is there any evidence that reducing what Ms. for in sex-specific language, does it need to be a stance?
What's important is just to have clear language, and I think common sense language, and I think most New Zealanders would actually say pregnant people are women, and that's quite acceptable to say so. Definitely not. We need to continue to have tailored communications to different groups as well, and that will continue, as the Minister said in her own communication.
Prime Minister, how closely are you monitoring Trump's talks of putting tariffs on pharmaceuticals, and how worrying is that talk for
Look, I mean, as I've said before, we don't think tariffs is the way forward. We think it actually only hurts the global economy. It ends up hurting New Zealanders ultimately, because if a farmer gets hit with tariffs and we respond with tariffs, then we all of a sudden have higher farm equipment. That means that farmer's spending less money with a cafe owner, and that hurts a whole bunch of businesses downstream. And that's why we advocate very strongly for no tariffs, and that's why we've been a free trade country for a long period of time. It's not a surprise. The President campaigned very strongly on tariffs, and we've been expecting this for some time. But we also are of the view that actually we can work very positively and constructively with the new American administration. And also, as a small country, we need to accelerate and build trade out everywhere across the world. And that's what we've been doing over the last 16 months. You've seen us do it this year, just with trips to the UAE, Vietnam, India as well.
Is New Zealand flying a bit under the radar with the Trump administration at the moment, do you think?
No, I think we've built very good relationships with the new administration. We've had very good top-to-top ministerial engagements. I had a very good conversation with President Trump myself initially. We've had our officials talking with each other for a long period of time. So, when I went to America in July last year, my goal was to broaden and deepen the relationships and the depth of relationships we have across a very complex political system, and we've been continuing to do that.
Even though Australia's pharmaceutical equivalent has already been pulled out as an issue by Trump's team, that there's been no issue in New Zealand?
Again, I just say to you, I'm very comfortable with how we're actually working with the Americans. We're doing so in a very positive, very constructive way. We are not putting retaliatory tariffs in place because we frankly don't believe that we believe they'll actually end up hurting New Zealand if we do that, and New Zealand workers, and we're not prepared to do that. But we are making the case, obviously, for free trade. We think that's good. New Zealand's benefited from that. And importantly, we have a huge world of opportunity out there, and that's why we've been hitting it so hard as we drive towards doubling our exports.
Just on your relationship with New Zealand first, just going back to the Director from Minister Luxon, did she or anyone from New Zealand first run that past you in Cabinet first?
No, but we're all very aligned on that position. And the way that we work as a former CEO is you have big people doing big jobs and big portfolios, and you entrust them and you empower them. You're very clear about what you expect them to deliver, but you let them get on with the job. And we don't want to do endless meeting culture. We want our ministers out and about doing things and getting things done. These two gentlemen, frankly, are good examples of what they're doing to restore law and order. When you see gang legislation in place, when you see serious consequences for serious young criminals, and when you see the removal of sentencing discounts and the resultant factor feeling that New Zealanders are feeling safer in their streets and their communities and their homes, that's a good thing.
Just on that, aren't gang numbers going up and police numbers are slowly going up? You're not going to meet the target for 2029?
I'll let Mark talk to that.
Yeah. So yes, gang numbers continue to go up. Of course, we put two gangs. I put two gangs at the end of last year onto the register that weren't there before. We're making progress on police numbers, but I think that what I'd like to do is just firstly acknowledge the fact that, as Paul highlighted, that we are making progress against our targets, and we are a government that came in and set ourselves targets and are holding ourselves to account. But I do want to acknowledge not only the justice sector agencies, including my own police and corrections, who have done an outstanding job. I want to acknowledge local government. I want to acknowledge CPNZ, our community patrollers, our Maori wardens, our community groups, our ethnic communities, who have all got a stake in this and have all come together and working hard to make our country a safer country. And although the early results, they're trending in the right direction, we remain motivated to make sure that we keep those numbers trending in the right direction.
What is happening with gangs? Why do you think gang numbers are going up?
I think that the gangs are still very active. The gangs are still actively recruiting. They're not going. The speed at which they're going, the rate of going up has definitely slowed down. It's recognition of the fact we've got more work to do, and we know we have. We inherited a shambles that took 6 years to bake in. I think we've done a pretty good job over the first 16 months to start to deal with that. And you've got a government that's led by our Prime Minister and a coalition that has said we're prioritising victims and public safety, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I think there's some really good things happening. I mean, if you think about it, we're seeing with the gang patch legislation and the tools that we've given police, that's also unearthing illegal guns and illegal drugs. This morning I've just come from Customs, and I've been seeing some of the work that they've been doing on certainly fighting transnational crime, and particularly drugs in particular. And there's some good progress happening in that space. There's a lot more to do, exactly as Mark said, but I'd just step you back. I think the way Mark coordinated a lot of the community in central the Auckland CBD, across the whole of the country now, there's been a 40% increase of police out on foot patrols. There's been a 60% reduction in ram raids. I remember a period of time for a good year where you find people and us would be standing in front of a superette or a dairy that had been ram raided overnight, and that doesn't happen so much anymore in New Zealand. So, that's down 60%. So we are seeing crime stabilise, starting to trend down as we started to talk about the violent crime today, total crime in general. We've got more work to do. Yes, we're very committed to recruiting more police officers. It's been outstanding to see the number of police staying in the police force. So the attrition rates have come down, which has been really fantastic. So they're staying, which is really great. Importantly, because they know they've got a government that's backing them. Importantly, we're seeing huge interest in recruitment. We're actually seeing some of our recruitment wings go from 70 to 100 recruits. And we're opening up, as you know, an Auckland training centre here so that we don't have, there's no disincentive to get in the way of a 20-week training program for new police officers. So, we are doing everything we can in 16 months from day one to put the foot on the accelerator to say enough is enough. We are restoring law and order in this country. We are ensuring there are rights and responsibilities. And that has been a lot of work on gangs, driving violent crime, serious young offenders, and also sentencing discounts.
On another note, Prime Minister, a group of legal experts late last year published a draft anti-slavery law that would set up a human trafficking commissioner to streamline monitoring, recording and reporting of sexual labour trafficking. Have you seen that draft legislation?
No, we have that's a big topic. There's work that goes on in customs and a number of our agencies around child exploitation in particular. There will be more for us to do, but for right here, right now, as I say, we just work through our quarterly plans. We focus our system so we actually deliver things at the other end and clear actions, but that's something we'll look at down the road.
Would you support a trafficking commissioner being set up?
I'm not sure. I think I want to see full advice. I really want to engage with the ministers around that before I make a position on it.
It's an issue that you've said that you would march for. You have not touched the legislation, the existing legislation yet. Why not?
Well, I've been pretty clear with you. It will come onto our agenda at some future point, but right here, right now, there are more pressing issues for us to sort through. Getting our kids to school, teaching them the basics brilliantly, dealing with restoring law and order, making sure we crack down on gangs, make sure that we get our economy moving the right way. So we are doing everything we can. We're working as quickly as possible, but as you know, the way I like to work is we say what we're going to do in each quarter, we then deliver those actions, we secure those outcomes and those results, and we move on.
The new IFB sort of survey shows 1 in 4 Kiwis are struggling with the cost of living. Nearly half are worried about job security. What are you doing to address these concerns?
Yeah, well, that's exactly the reason why we've ended up in a huge amount of economic pain and suffering due to massive economic mismanagement under the previous administration, and that's why you've seen our government cut the wasteful spending. A consequence of that is that you get lower inflation. The consequence of that is lower interest rates. Lower interest rates means the economy grows and then people get to stay in their jobs. It's very simple. They're the immutable laws of economics, and we've been working our way through each of those 5 component parts to make sure that we can actually make sure Kiwis have a great future ahead of them, that they can actually have really awesome jobs. What we're doing is making sure we're getting cost of living support out, whether it's through tax relief for the first time in 14 years. You're seeing wages grow faster than inflation over the last 5 quarters. You've seen interest rate cuts. Just the interest rate cut we had last week, for example, if you've got a $500,000 mortgage over 25 years and you've seen the interest rate come down 2 percentage points, that's $300 extra a fortnight that you have in your pocket. So everything we're doing is we are very mindful of the cost of living crisis and the pressure that New Zealanders are under, and that's why you're seeing us cut the wasteful spending and actually bring inflation interest rates down, and finally the economy's growing again. That's a good thing.
What do you say to those people who are feeling really nervous about job security?
Oh, we understand it, we get it, and this is the consequence of economic mismanagement, and thankfully you have a government now that actually understands economics, understands why the importance of growth is so important and so central to everything we do. The reason you hear us talking about economic growth is that is actually how we get more investment into this country, more activity, more economic activity that leads to higher paying jobs, more job security and better opportunities for our kids and our grandkids. That is our motivation. It's also the way in which we get better education, better healthcare systems, is by growing our economic position as well. Yeah, they're doing a great job, but I'll let Mark talk to that.
Yeah, so the police prepared themselves really well in terms of a training package that went right around the country before the legislation was introduced. As you know, many commentators were out there saying that it wouldn't work, and I think that the country has seen clearly, and the reason why they said it wouldn't work is the gangs have become too strong, and the police had lost capability, and I think that you've seen clearly that has been responded to. Our police, without a doubt, have got the deep capability, and the gangs have been compliant because they've worked out really quickly that that there's no point messing around with this, because you've got a government that's very focused on making sure that we make this country safer, and you've got a police force that's responded to that.
Are you quite pleased that we've been compliant and responding in that way?
Yeah, I've been very pleased because, number one, it shows that that they understand and they know that there's a new government, that we're serious about public safety. Number two, the public no longer exposed to those gang patches. And I had some really good feedback from someone that works at the Gisborne Hospital a couple of weeks ago that said not only with the not wearing the patches in the hospital, the staff and the patients are no longer exposed to the intimidation, but the other thing they've noticed is that the gang members' behaviour has de-escalated because they're not trying to staunch up and act in a certain way when they put that patch on. So I think that it's been very positive for us as a country, and I'm very proud of the work that the police have done.
Last one, guys. Prime Minister, just a question from a colleague on Minister Costello's directive again. How can trans and non-binary people expect to get good access to health services under this directive?
Well, nothing changes for them. We're just saying let's use common sense, practical language. Pregnant people are women. It's as simple as that, right? So let's just do that. Let's just use clear language, and we'll continue to have targeted language for different communities across the whole of New Zealand.
But do you accept that excludes non-binary and trans people in certain settings?
No, we're going to continue, as the Minister has said, to have appropriate communications for different communities as well. But let's just be common sense about it, right? Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much.